Welcome everyone, Questini here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires and the details that Creative Assembly revealed in their latest video on the subject of the Khorne Ogre Greenskin DLC, as well as future content that they are working. They did get Mitch, who is working on a lot of the smaller updates to the game. But of the details that they did share, they were talking about the Ironclaw and how his campaign mechanics and battle mechanics were going to work, like stratagems that are going to affect both his battle prowess as well as affect his campaign. So I guess that's going to be fairly interesting to actually see how that all of that does play out with him. People have made the point that this is similar to how Lu Bu worked in Free Kingdoms. I want to know about that. I didn't play any of the Free Kingdoms DLCs. Like, Free Kingdoms was an okay game, and that did have a bunch of great ideas, and it could have been a great game, but it just kind of ended up faltering for a large number of reasons. I personally wasn't interested in a DLC. What's interesting is they're going to add the Savage Orc Shaman, and they did specify that this is going to be a Lord choice for the Greenskin. So all those Savage Orc factions, I imagine that they're soon going to be led by Savage Orc Shamans, or Savage Orc Great Shamans in the game, which makes sense. Like, it was kind of weird, like, you see a lot of these Savage Orc factions, the smaller one, the Top Knots, the one in Cathay, the one in Lustrad, they're all led by Orc war bosses, as opposed to being led by Savage Orcs. So one of the key beneficiaries of this is actually going to be Warzag, and how he's going to finally get a caster lord that is going to really help him in his campaign. And in general, I would say this will benefit orcs in general, because if you're playing Greenskins, right, the best general choice, by far and away, is actually just getting a bunch of Goblin Great Shamans. But now they've also moved Warzag in the Southlands. And I don't know how that's going to play out. I don't know what impact that's going to have on the campaign. It probably is going to make Scarbrand's campaign less annoying to deal with, assuming they haven't changed Scarbrand's starting location as well, which, by the way, could be a very real possibility. But I'm glad that they are looking at legendary lords that already exist in the game and deciding, okay, where would it make sense to put this particular lord? I would, however, have to stress this out. Greenskins in the jungle, how to feel about that? Well, I think the jungle climate is genuinely one of the worst climates to have in a campaign, unless you have the Underway, which Greenskins do have the ability of doing that, of using that. It's a question of mobility. Jungle just slows you down significantly. It does affect you in a pretty bad way, and it does have a fairly negative impact on your campaign, especially if you're playing Lizardmen. Skaven, Greenskins, Dwarves even, if you're playing Forik. Yeah, they do end up having a better situation. It's kind of a silly state of affairs with respect to that. Then they talked about Goldfang, and yes, I am using that particular name because I don't know how YouTube would react to it. But Goldfang, Maneater, if we look at him, they were talking about like his contracts, like you might get a contract to fight a war for Karl Franz against, say, Vlad, and get rewarded significantly at the end. I am really curious to see how that's going to work. And more importantly, though, beyond like what unique mechanics Goldfang is going to have, I am really interested in knowing how the ogres are going to work, how their camps are going to work, how they're going to work in allied territory, for instance, or neutral territory. But yeah, I mean, it does seem at the very least that ogres, or if not at least Goldfang, he is going to have better contracts. The contract system that the ogres currently have is a joke. Unless we're talking about the camp growth, every single reward from those contracts is just not worth the hassle, unless it's like something very easy and it's in your way. But it is so extremely situational that it's not worth it. Whereas with Goldfang, he is a mercenary, he is going around there, and it makes sense for him to have like a longer term contract in a campaign. And the possibilities that this does open up in a campaign are certainly significant. Of course, there's also the discussion of Khorne, and lots of details on that subject, like Skulltaker. He's gonna take the essence of people that he's going to be fighting. He's going to, and he has a new Yeti unit for the ogres they're talking about. We'll see. Like, they did mention that Gorgers are the offensive unit, so they don't want Yetis to just basically be another Gorger unit, so it's going to be more support-oriented. At least that was my impression with respect to that. For Khorne, the subject, though, they seemingly are not going to add the new lore choice for Khorne, or rather, they're not going to add the new hero choice for Khorne, but they're going to give Khorne 2 legendary heroes, including one from the end times. And I want to remind people of the leaks that did come out a while ago, that we're going to get Dogs of War. I mean, that is pretty expected because it is in the freaking game files. But one of the crucial leaks on that subject, by the way, was the idea that we were going to have like kind of an end time situation with Nagash over there. And now since they're bringing, well, I mean, there are already characters from the end times they brought into the game. Or rather, characters they did play a significant role in the end times, even if they were not necessarily exclusive to it. But now bring an exclusive end times character, yeah, I think it's going to lean towards that particular direction. Very importantly, from my perspective, with respect to what Mitch was talking about over there, and the updates that have been that Creative Assembly is working on, they did mention that some of these are going to be much bigger than others, so there's not like every single patch is going to contain X, Y, and Z amount of content. Some are going to have significant changes, others are going to have less significant changes. But what I do really like about this, like they already mentioned Norska, and I don't remember who else, but in this video that they were doing, they did mention Bretonia, and they did mention Kislev. Thank God for that. I'm going to make videos on the subject of Bretonia and Kislev and what they actually need as races in the game to actually work right now. I think Bretonia is actually a lot more workable as a race than Kislev. Like, don't get me wrong, Bretonia and Kislev can work as races, but like Bretonia has a significant economic power, growth power and all that, but their army that they do have doesn't work very well within the campaign style, and also the annoyance of vows, the research tree, all that. With Kislev, yeah, the supporter system, the piss poor economy, those do hold them back in a fairly substantial way. And I mentioned that they do hold them back, not in the sense that, oh, you can't win a campaign as Kislev. You can, but as someone who's played a lot of Kislev, I think I've played more campaigns as Kislev than anyone else. I have to give my particular perspective on this, though I'll talk about it more in a dedicated video on the subject. But my perspective on the issue of Kislev is you conquer a huge amount of territory, right? And it just doesn't feel like you've built a massive empire. It doesn't feel rewarding. At the same time, you can't just sit and play a defensive playstyle. You can't do what the Wood Elves do. And honestly, I would not want them to go down the Wood Elf path because the Wood Elves are boring as dirt to play. With respect to that. Maybe they can take some inspiration from the dwarves in a certain way, because with the dwarves, you now have the deeps, which can reward the turtling playstyle, but at the same time, you are also rewarded for an aggressive playstyle. It's kind of important to understand something that CA themselves have stated multiple times, that Total War is about conquering, it's about empire building. Sitting on your ass and turtling is not something that really works well in virtually any strategy game, or very, very rarely. Like, it's a difficult thing to pull off, and I can't really think of any game I've personally played that does make it work. And yeah, I understand Kislev should be more defense-oriented, but how do you make that work and not just be like the end-turn button simulator? That is a discussion. Maybe Kislev should work like that. That is, of course, a particular point of discussion. But yeah, I think like their special cities don't feel that special. Like the landmarks in terms of your military, great. In terms of economy, not really so great. So I think they would need a buff like that to really be worthwhile from the economic perspective, not just like, oh, you get hero capacity, you get Ice Guard easier, you get global recruitment benefits. All of those are military benefits. Kislev's problem is not the military. It's never been their military. It's the economy. Well, we could use an earlier game artillery to help us with sieges. Just my particular perspective on that. One of the things they haven't talked about, like, oh, what are we going to do to rework sieges? People talk about a lot of things. I saw a post on Reddit saying, we need a supply system to use offensively for sieges. Like, okay, you have this many supplies when you attack a settlement, and you can build this amount of siege equipment. That would be such a great solution. Like, ladders, siege towers, rams, all that kind of stuff. Although, I gotta say, even if I could build siege towers instantly in the game, I would not use them. Like, sending units via siege tower or via ladders is a surefire way of getting a lot of them killed. What we need are ways of destroying walls. And also a better wall destruction system, someone mentioned on Reddit. Like, yes, there are diamonds in the dirt that is Reddit. Someone was mentioning, like, being able to destroy a wall continuously, as opposed to, like, oh, there is this gap in the wall, but there is also some columns that stick out. Like, that would be great. Just my perspective on that. I would also say, like, the buildables in sieges need to go away completely, because they're not making sieges better. The barricades and towers look bad to begin with. They don't fit the aesthetic of any race. Like, that's one of the things that it's an eyesore. From the visual perspective, like, you have these gray looking settlements, and then you have those freaking eyesores of barricades and wooden towers everywhere. Like, if there were more unique towers to every single race, or even just like a chaos tower, a greenskin tower, or something like that, right? Like, if all of the chaos factions, and there's a lot of them, had the same tower, and all the undead factions had the same tower, or maybe not for Tomb Kings, but still, it is just an idea on that subject. Regardless, there's a lot more to talk about, but overall, I think that what they were revealing in their communication has improved substantially compared to how things have been before. And I do appreciate the amount of effort they're putting in right now. Questine here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.